Yeah. Welcome, guys. We're back here with another webinar after a few months. As usual, for the people who have attended these webinars, we'll follow the same routine. So I'm going to just pause for a few minutes to make sure that people are able to log in, join in, and if they have any technical issues, they can get through them. So we'll get off the stage and come back on in about 2 or 3 minutes. Good morning and welcome, everyone. Just we're waiting for people to log in and join, so I'll get this started. Like you guys, welcome Shafi. He's going to be the presenter for this this webinar topic today. So most of the people who've attended our webinars in past would follow along this format quite well, but I'll just introduce the basic format to everybody who's new. So this webinar series we started when the COVID-19 lockdown had initially started, and we've been offering these webinars recurrently on topics which are selected to help build awareness of improvement methodologies and tools that we used in past. So similarly to that, today's topic is on supply chain management, and as I said, was being presented by Shafi Jatoi. Shafi is a leadership position for analyst team. He's a supply chain specialist with over 10 years of experience within the mining industry. During his tenure, he has led teams as well as directly managed and influenced critical categories related to mine and surface plant productions. I personally worked and collaborated on procurement and supply chain improvement initiatives with him during our previous tenure at Vale. And on today's topic, he's also managed and led initiatives related to process optimization, cost reductions, and supply chain mapping. Before I hand over the stage to him, the structure of the talk, we'll start with the presentation on the topic in a video format. While presentation is occurring, you can ask any questions that you may have in the questions tab on the right side of your screen. Shafi will keep an eye on the questions during the presentation and will then answer them at the end. Also, there's a question on in the polls. There are a series of topics planned under this umbrella of supply chain management. Have a quick look and give us some feedback on what you would like to see over the next few webinars. And as always, we'll also have an opportunity to talk face-to-face and discuss any further questions or interesting points through a Google Meet session after the webinar. A link has been added, and I will remind everybody at the end of our session today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Shafi. Shafi will get off stage, and we'll follow along the presentation after you introduce the topic.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I hope everybody's doing well, staying safe. Awesome to introduce me. I've had experience within the mining industry, within Vale, specifically looking after a fair bit of the base metals operation. So long time in this field. So in terms of introducing the topic, supply chain is a large area. It includes many functional areas that we typically have in an organization. So this webinar is an attempt to introduce the topic, and then subsequently with the polls, as Austin mentioned, we can delve down deeper into specific areas that you were interested in, and I can go into greater detail. I guess feedback would be great. What you would also like to see, you can put that in the chat if that works for you. But without further ado, I think we can get into the video now for the presentation. Hello, and welcome to a webinar on supply chain. I'm your host, Shafi Jathoui, and I'm going to walk you through this presentation. So let's begin. To go through the agenda, we're going to talk about what is strategy. We're going to then specifically pivot to what is supply chain, the mission of supply chain within an organization, establishing its role. So some steps, these are non-exhaustive, but some steps to establish the role. Core pillars of supply chain, good versus great as it relates to supply chain trends within the industry and some aspects of a lean supply chain. So let's get started. What is strategy? Strategy, in a general sense, is the direction and scope of an organization over the long term. So we're looking multiple years out, maybe 5, maybe 10, and where we would like this business to get to. This is not a short-term view. There are multiple projects that are placed in between to get to the overall objective, but it is a longer term. It also drives the configuration of resources within an environment, how to create advantage for your organization for a longer period of time to maximize value, which feeds into the next point. It is to to meet the needs of the market and fulfill shareholder, stakeholder expectations to generate value. That's the objective here, is to create a planned path forward, which will keep your organization progressing as well as generating value. So what are tactics, and are they different than strategy? The answer is yes. You could have multiple tactics within a business strategy. Think of it as a roadmap. You have a number of projects, number of steps to get to the ultimate end goal, which is essentially what tactics are. So, moving from that strategic definition to what is supply chain, let's go through it. It is in essence delivering on the strategy and on the promises made by the organization. So it has to fulfill the organizational strategy using a combination of people, activities, resources, and it has to be pulling towards that organizational goal. Supply chain has multiple different functional areas, and each of them have their own operating style, operating method, but ultimately at the top, it has to pivot towards how your organization is progressing and the strategy they have developed. Supply chain takes an end-to-end view, as it includes multiple areas of the business under one banner, but it takes an end-to-end view. And what is the mission of supply chain? It is in essence, the perfect order. The perfect order in this way that I've defined it, and it is, again, non-exhaustive because you could change any of those, but it includes a combination of the right product, the right place, the right time, the right price, the right quality, the right packaging. You could have infinite numbers of variables there, but at the end of the day, they all have to come together and create the perfect order, which is harmony. From raw material procurement to delivery to consumer as expected, as per the plan, without delays, without issues during manufacturing or delivery. That is what the perfect order is. The mission of supply chain is also to add and remove capacity as per the needs of the business. It's the function's responsibility to measure how it is going to satisfy that. It is also a sustainable reduction of total costs from the entire chain. So not just from one aspect, but through the chain to identify efficiencies and drive out cost, to promote sustainability, corporate social responsibility in the areas that you operate, with the communities that you deal with. And finally, but I think one of the most important, is to develop people as leaders. That is one of the missions, and it is an extremely important mission. If I move over to the chart on the right, I do want to point out an aspect, right? So we consider logistics management as part of a supply chain, but through the chart, you can see logistics, or the movement of material, happens from the time you decide that you want to move ahead with a raw material purchase through the life cycle. So it is as you can see, it's all integrated. Each function area is dependent on one another, and we have to be speaking to one another for the perfect order to actually come to bear. When establishing the role of supply chain, one of the starting points is having executive sponsorships and a clear outcome. That is the key to any goal, is to have, what are we trying to achieve. And when you're setting up expectations, don't focus on the issues. Focus on what you want. Where do you see the value coming? How would you like this to operate? And you start that with expectations on decision making, on communication, on roles. It has to be, this is where you start off with. And when you're defining roles within areas, you keep it simple. You're not going down to job description levels. You're speaking about 2 to 3 bullet points. Define mine, let's define yours, and let's define somebody else's role as well. With regards to the final bubble, which is a never-ending bubble, is on working on integration, creating balance between functional areas. It is easy to get into a siloed mentality when we're not speaking to each other. So based on the expectation set and the definition of the roles, you can work on integration activities, and a framework that has been agreed upon. And this is where executive sponsorship really plays a part, where you have a leader there who's joining multiple areas together to sit down to have a conversation, and again, focus on how do we achieve the organization's goals. We spoke about, I mentioned core pillars in the beginning of the presentation, and the core pillars for supply chain would be the strategy, service, and cost. These are all highly important, highly dependent. Highly dependent on delivering a successful supply chain function. So first pillar, strategy. Like a strategy, it has a broad business and competitive context. It has a clear outcome, and at the end of the strategy, it gives you a set of options on how to achieve that outcome. Again, thinking about the definition of roles, you would then identify the keys to your success. So in this sense, how do we take advantage of emerging opportunities, reprioritization of resources, performance management, financial prudence. But the crux of all of this is the bias to action. Every success story starts with a relentless focus on achieving the objective and following through with an action plan. The second pillar is service. So defining the right level of service is critical to the success. Having policies and procedures in place to maintain an acceptable standard of service is also required. And inventory management gets a special shout out in this side because it is one of the largest costs for an organization, as well as something that could negatively affect your achieving your standard of success if you don't have enough when delivering to the customer. As the graphic illustrates, you start off with, the manufacturer, are you placing the order, manufactured raw material supplier delivering it to the manufacturer, who creates the product, gives it to the warehouse, and then you deliver it to the customer. And then the reverse cycle. Now, one thing to understand when we talk about inventory and why it holds such a special piece in the supply chain world is adjusting to changes in demand is not linear. There is a mathematical formula that goes in. There's a correct ratio for you, but it is not a one-to-one relationship, which is where we get into troubles of either being stocked out, overstock, and related issues. That is why it gets a special mention here. And the final pillar, cost. Again, focus should not be on the cheapest, but the lowest total cost. The chart here is non-exhaustive, but it is a typical waterfall for a product or category. For us, so if you evaluate it, you would set out what are your specific costs in each of the buckets, and is there an opportunity for you to be better? I know margin seems to be one of the largest ones in this graph, and there's a reason for that. The reason I put that in is every business is out there to generate revenue and for their own shareholders. But when you're looking at an acquisition cost with a supply partner, what you have to judge is are they charging me the right level of margin? Is it on par with similar industry leaders? Is it above? Is it below? You have to be able to answer questions on each of these areas. And going back to the text, when we say the attention is the success or failure of business processes is magnified during the acquisition procedure, it is what this simply means is when you add too many steps, redundancy in it, too many checkpoints, you slow things down. And at certain times, being slow oftentimes leads to more costly decisions. So it is always prudent to look at your acquisition procedure and mirror it and match it with the objectives of the supply chain and making sure that you are in an essence completely agile while respecting the rules that have been set forth. An underutilized tool is supplier relationship management. When we award a contract to a supplier, our business becomes their sole focus, and they're focused on making sure that, well, they maximize the value of that contract, and then we maximize our delivery, receipt of service from that contract. It is important to have your own assumptions and understanding on where value can be generated, but it is also important to sit down with your partners and understand and evaluate what they see that can be improved. And then that doesn't necessarily mean that they would be the right partner to do it. It just means that you now have a secondary opinion compared to your opinion, and you can cross-match to see where you believe there is value and where somebody servicing the business there perceives there to be value. To move to the good versus great. So what is good versus great? It means that when we look at supply chain, we tend to be like, I need to be great at everything. And the reality is, with the limited resources available, when you try to be great at everything, you typically underinvest in certain areas. So it's a good time to go back and sit down and say, of all these places, the unequivocal answer is you need to be great at people, period. There should be no, I'm going to be good at people. You need to be great at people to develop leaders, build trust, build morale, and get the maximum output. But in terms of, I'm going to pick on network here. If warehousing is not a strong suite, it's not something that your organization believes adds value to them, then you have third-party logistics. You have 4PLs that you can contract those whose specialty and whose core focus is this job. So you can be good at warehousing, or you can outsource it, or you could be great at warehousing. Same thing with systems, same things with capabilities, such as you do not want a private fleet of trucks. You would want to move to a third party. Now the decision is, you want asset-based, non-asset-based. You look at capabilities. You look at the transport management systems. You look at how they optimize freight. So you can choose to be good at something, great at something, or completely outsource and manage that one piece as well. And then the next slide speaks to trends within supply chain. And going on from good versus great, supplier and customer integration through ERPs, through other forms of cloud technology, where you can become seamless in how you procure, how you source, procure, and pay and deliver the item that you're looking for, that you're manufacturing, or your commitment to the customer. Global risks and opportunities have never been more apparent since COVID. It's no longer about a linear structure, it's about a circular structure. How do I reuse what I already have, or maybe make it more efficient? Demographics of customers may be changing, locations may be changing, plants may be downsizing or upsizing for that matter. So there's a whole host of trends to look at within your own demographic. Regulations, the new trade agreement between Canada, US, and Mexico, how does that affect us? Where's the learning on that? Do we have the right partner who understands how to use this new document to our benefit? And energy economics, we need to be clean and green within the communities that we operate. Do we have a plan in place? Are we reducing our environmental footprint? All of these, energy economics is a lot more than just what I stated, but these are all trends that we need to be paying attention to. And then finally, the last slide within this deck speaks to aspects of the lean supply chain. So everybody does a little bit of something, but when we implement a system, it is always go back and look at continuous improvement. So for procurement, we look at procurement process flow. Is there redundancy in the decision making? Can we make improvements and changes that will result in better value for us and our customers? Supplier development, do we have more suppliers in play? Are we limiting our own opportunities? What can we do there? Logistics optimization. Do we have wasted cubic space? Do we have have we mandated requirements from our logistics partners that aren't required, such as, we need a tri-axle truck, but we're stating we need a quad-axle truck. There's areas for improvement there with transport management systems as well. Specification review, have we overspec'd a specific area? Are we buying too high of a grade and then not buying high enough where we need the safety and security? So it's a complex mix on the type of the need we have. Warehouse management, do we have the right infrastructure in place? Is the racking the correct size? Or do we have pallets just stacking up along the aisles? Are the aisles too wide? Are the aisles too narrow? And then do we have the right warehouse management system in place? Inventory flow, have we identified our high, medium, low items? How much time does it take for a warehouse technician to go around and pick items? What is the error rate? Are we mapping all of that? Reporting and templates. Templates, it's a good tool. It helps to reduce decision making, which in essence reduces errors. So do we have the right templates in place? Reporting, do we have the right reports running? Do we have the right KPIs that we're measuring? It is all aspects that for all functions of supply chain that we can improve upon. And then finally, I wrote there contract management. Once we award a contract, are we measuring spend? Is it as what we estimated? Are we measuring overtime? Are we measuring scope creep? Are we measuring charges that don't belong on this specific contract? So these are all areas that we would look at in terms of lean. And this is a never-ending process. So once you implement for example, logistics management system, you would always go back and say 6 months, 1 year, did it achieve what I expected it to achieve? And if it didn't, how can I improve it, make changes to it to get to optimize that even further? So this brings us to an end to the current presentation. This is the last slide. I hope you got value out of it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please, I think this is part of the webinar. You can go in and put the questions. I'll be happy to answer them. And thank you for attending. Hello, welcome back. One thing I want to clarify, it's a different shirt. I have too many blue shirts. They all look the same. Yeah, so let's get into, we have a few questions. Actually, we have, so the question here we have is, in your experience, which portion of the supply chain has the biggest opportunity for improvement, has the most waste and inefficiency? So my answer there was the lowest hanging fruit are usually internal. When we look at cost reductions, the first thing we would do is contract management per se. Are we managing the contract as it was awarded? Are we spending the funds that we anticipated? Second thing goes back hand in hand with the the special mention out to inventory. Are we buying too much? Or do we have obsolescence? Are we storing all the wrong things in the warehouse and all the right things outside the warehouse? So what is our error rate there? If we were to look at just these two items, it promotes a significant amount of savings per se. Just if you can reduce spend on the contract and manage the inventory better. The thing is, we typically plan for the worst, and we put in systems that rarely get updated because we get busy. We move forward, other projects come through, so we keep buying it on a repetitive basis. The other thing is issues with things getting lost if the warehouse is not properly set up. So do we have, to answer the question in a nutshell, those two items are there. If I was to pick a third one, it would be specification review as well. We could take a look and see, are we over-speccing our contracts or are we over-speccing what we need, which in essence will bring down the cost.
Okay, thanks, Jeffy. For other people who are still online, can you, if there's any questions, please go ahead and ask in the question tab. In the meantime, I have one for you, Shafi, is in your experience, right? What are the key KPIs, metrics, whatever you want to call them, that you would measure to drive the strategic supply chain management?
Sure, I can answer that. That's a good question. So supply chain, like I mentioned, as a function, is comprised of many different areas that feed through to the top. So I would look at each individual area underneath. So if I'm looking at procurement, then I would look at how many contracts do I have? What kind of spend is in the contracts? What kind of spend is outside of the contracts? How am I spending too much on the credit card? How does my spend? So spend would be one, contracts would be one, manual POs versus contracts would be the second one. So if I move from there over to inventory, I would turn, how many lines per order am I getting in a purchase order? What's my order picking rate? What's my error rate? That's what I would look at there. And then if I were to move over to the warehousing side, it would be dock to stock. Like how long does it take for the inventory when the inventory comes in? How long does it take for me to put it there? I would also look at within the warehouse in terms of the travel time. I would also look at how much of my time is spent with people just walking around looking for stuff. That's there too. Then moving on to the logistics side, I would see how much cubic waste is happening, because when we are loading, when we get trucks come in and we get quotations, it's based on the cubic dimensions that the shipper expects to ship, not on the actual box that we're shipping. So if I'm shipping boxes that are wasting a lot of space, I'm paying more for freight. And I also look at how LTL versus FTL. How many of my shipments are going full truckload versus less than truckload? Is there waiting time? Am I incurring additional demurrage that's happening? So all of those things I would look at in combination and see what is the health of my supply chain function as a whole.
For sure, yeah. Okay, those are good, because in the part of the work that we've been doing at different mines, right, it's always we start from the angle of bringing more throughput or reducing costs, but we're looking at more operation side of things, right, and not the suppliers and the process inputs and outputs in that sense directly, but eventually we'll get there, right? So right. I'm glad that you mentioned some of these things, because when I'm trying to reduce wastes out of the process or add more efficiency, some of these things are actually pivotal, and they kind of drive those costs up, and you're not getting the proper dollar per ton in the end. Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? We still have time for a few more questions before I switch this over to Google Meet session for the informal tax. If you've got, please go ahead and ask. And I see some of the responses.
We have a question come up from Tim.
Okay, perfect.
We have two cats facing off in the backyard, and I missed.
Essential focus on people and
innovation. That must have been interesting. Two cats facing off in the backyard. It's my chat too.
Yeah, I think what he's getting there is there you go.
Oh, okay, elaborate on blockchain AI. Blockchain, from what I understand, it's there are a few organizations such as Ernst & Young and Deloitte that have set in tools for supply chain. They're testing that out with some of their larger clients. Some of the frozen food sections. I don't have. I'm still learning about it. So just rather than me saying something incorrect, from what I understand, these two larger consulting groups, they are working with their clients, have implemented some blockchain tools. It's still very early in the stages. They expect in the next 3 to 5 years that they'll be completely mature out and understand what the benefits are and what kind of effort there is happening. So that's where I understand where blockchain within supply chain lies, and blockchain within finances, financial industry is going is a lot further ahead. More generally, I missed it. If where you rank innovation and comparison.
Again, I can jump in here.
Sure.
It fits into the whole conversation of we always talk about stability before capability and only in capital kind of thing. So it's, to me, innovation, of course, has a big return in the end, and that's where everybody is going towards. Right? It's a new thing that everybody wants to bring in, just like digitization and everything else, big data. And for sure, I think it can deliver value in return, but you need those fundamentals in place first, right? So for me, if you can get the right processes, the right measures, right pillars that you just talked about in place, then innovation can deliver that value as a lot more, and can raise the bar a lot higher, in my mind anyways. Go ahead, Shafi.
I was going to go with the same thing as well. Innovation is great. If you can add innovative ways to make your warehouse better, such as the Amazon and the Walmarts of the world, where they have conveyors, multiple mile conveyors running within the warehouse to take advantage of the ceiling heights, right? The clear height and the operating height, that little dead space. They're running conveyors there that are going directly into the bins. But before you get there, you need to have the right KPIs measuring what is actually happening on the ground and whether that next step actually makes sense. So I don't really know if I'm answering your question, but I'm going to keep answering it until you stop, I guess, until you let me know that I have touched on it. The majority of the sorry, let's see how the chat come through. Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah, Amazon and Walmart and Alibaba, they've raised the bar in terms of autonomous warehousing, where they have little robots running around, where the stocking and picking is automated. People aren't moving around; they're stationed in one area. So MSD injuries are reduced. In terms of DHL has input technology for picking into Google Glass, so the employee wears the glass, walks around. They have the cart in front of them, which is automated coming in behind them. And when they pick up the item, it actually scans the item barcode. And when they look at the cart, it highlights the bins that this item needs to go through. So it's reducing the number of decision making and therefore the error rates. And with the way they have positioned, every time an item starts getting higher up in the consumption, it starts moving closer to the actual area where the people start off with a journey. So they're reducing travel time as well. They're doing some amazing stuff.
Hey, thanks, Shafi. I also see on the poll side, contract management is the one which got the most votes. So we'll make sure that we line that up in near future. Guys, thank you very much for attending and being part of this webinar. As the COVID waves numbers start to increase again, we'll reschedule some of these and start bringing them back in. Follow the link. I had placed it in the beginning, but I'll put it down again. If you guys want to join the Google Meet follow-up talk informally, face-to-face with Shafi. And thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, everybody. It was a great session.
Everyone.